Imagine you're boarding a plane. You trust that it's safe, right? But do you ever stop and think about how these airlines prevent or minimize the risks that could possibly occur? Or let's say a hospital, for example. Do we ever think about how they're able to prevent failures from happening from surgeries? Well, the answer is pretty simple. It's in probabilistic risk assessment. This is a powerful tool in industries that emphasize reliability and safety. In other words, it's non-negotiable. And in this video, I'll be explaining what probabilistic risk assessment is, also known as PSA, and we'll be doing a deep dive, but in simpler terms. But first, I'm a risk management professional going on 10 years, and when I look online, I just don't see that much practical information on the topic of risk management, right? So I made this channel just so I can explain more of the topics, and if you want me to get industry specific, feel free to leave a comment, and I'll definitely be more than welcome to discuss that information. The videos won't be, I'm not, too camera savvy, and I'll definitely try and do better as far as, making it all fancy. But it's not any clickbaity. It's just full of information and explaining the topic, bringing awareness to a lot of these topics that I feel like are overlooked in the industry. I feel like risk management relates to any business, but is often overlooked in every business. It's not the top one, top two, top 10 thing that we even look towards when we're building a business. So I want to highlight a lot of these topics so you can start implementing them in your business today. It occurs, or it is rather than occurs, it's applicable to any business, whether you have a small business, a medium-sized business, or you're growing into a large business. So enough about that. I do also offer one-on-one consultations where I can start helping you identify risk, create a mitigation plan, and kind of start that springboard those processes in your business. So definitely feel free to look in the description below and we can discuss more on that. But for right now, let's get started. Let's understand, let's take a deeper dive in a simple way into what PSA, probabilistic risk assessment, is and how it can apply to your business today. All right, let's start with the basics. What is probabilistic risk assessment? There's a lot of fancy definitions, but honestly, in simple terms, probabilistic risk assessment is all about predicting failures before they happen. It ultimately asks three questions. What are the risks? How likely are they to happen? And if they are to happen, what exactly does happen? What's the worst case scenario of that risk, right? So it's just like the game Jenga with the blocks. You know that pulling out certain blocks can cause three things. One, you can pull out the block, nothing happens. You're able to put it on top. It goes to the next turn. Another block could be pretty shaky. And that third block could cause it to collapse, right? So PSA, when it comes into the picture, PSA is understanding, is calculating, is very quantitative. So it's calculating the probability of that happening and then the ways to prevent that risk, which is pulling the blocks out and it collapsing, from happening, right? So why is PSA important? I'm glad you asked. PSA is used in high risk industries. It helps prevent disasters. It helps save lives. It helps reduce costs. And some of the biggest users are the aviation industry, the healthcare industry, the nuclear power industry. In these industries, there's a high risk for loss. So for the aviation industry, we know that they have a chance of mechanical failures in flights. There's a possibility that there could be a crash. We know in the healthcare industry with the surgeries and whatnot, there's a chance of equipment failure. In the nuclear industry, there's a chance that the plant has a catastrophic event. So with PSA in place, it helps take a preventative measure, right? It helps them identify these risks ahead of time so they can figure out strategies, frameworks to put in place so these are prevented. Another way I like to look at PSA is like the crystal ball of risk, right? It takes a quantitative approach and it uses math and probability to see the future and stop these potential risks from happening. And this is why it is something that I personally suggest the small businesses to use, the medium business to use, and even, of course, the large businesses to use, because it's not a reactive approach. It's not when something goes wrong, what do we do? You can put your business ahead by being able to alleviate certain risks if you put your PSA tool in play. So I know the big question is, how can I implement PSA in my business today? So I've created a simple 3-step formula that you can implement today, and I've written it right here. You can implement this today and how you can implement, PSA in your business today. So step 1, you want to identify all the possible failures that could happen. That means the technical failures. That means the possible human errors. That means even the possible external events that could happen with bad weather. You want to really put your business through the ringer and jot down all the possible risks that could happen internally and externally that could affect your business. Step 2, you want to assign the probability of these things happening. So with that being said, you may have to check the historical data. You may have to put your business through simulations. You may have to stress test your business. You may have to look at statistical models. You may have to do some forecasting, heat mapping. You want to assign the probability, calculate the probability of these failures happening from the most likely to happen to the least likely to happen. And then once you do that, step 3, you want to assess the impact. So now at this point, what is the worst case scenario that could happen, right? And then you want to really understand how you could create strategies around this to reduce or prevent the risk. And then you want to make decisions based upon that. So this could mean improving your maintenance schedules. You may have to redesign different systems. You may have to go a different way about hiring. You may have to change up different procedures, right? Just any type of way, and it does get industry specific. You may even have to add up backup safety protocols, right? And it definitely does get very specific as we relate it to the industry. But you want to make sure that once you have all this information, you're making the right decision so that you either prevent this from happening, or when it does happen, you're able to react quicker. So once again, step 1, you want to identify the possible failures. 2, you want to assign the probability of it happening. And then 3, you want to assess the impact. And then based off assessing the impact, you want to make final decisions. So let's go back to our airline example. When a flight is about to take off, once again, they have to check the gas, they have to check the engine, they have to check the weather. A lot of us, we get angry because either our flight is delayed or sometimes it's canceled. But this is the process, of PSA being into work. Sometimes, lives are being saved because your flight was delayed. Lives are being saved because your flight was canceled. Because sometimes there are landing gear malfunctions that have happened. There's pilot errors that could happen. But there's a lot of things that happen within a plane that have to be checked off before the flight could even take off. That's the process of understanding what risks come with flying. It's the process of assigning the probability of those things happening. And then it's a process of understanding that the worst case scenario is having hundreds, possibly hundreds of lives on board that could be lost if this thing goes wrong. So sometimes the best decision, although we may not like it, we may be tired from vacation, or we may be trying to get to vacation, but understanding the risk that could happen, sometimes the best case scenario, the best decision when you have to make decision is delaying that flight, is canceling that flight, because these risks happen. And if you're not careful, there are consequences to each of these risks. And PSA, Probabilistic Safety Assessment, is all about understanding the consequences of risk and then making decisions around them to improve your business so these risks aren't happening. But if they do happen, you have backup plans in place to mitigate the risks. To wrap everything up, PSA applies to any business that wants to manage risk effectively. I know I used a lot of the high risk industries as examples, as far as the aviation, the nuclear, the healthcare industry, but honestly, it applies to every business, right? It takes the simple foundational frameworks of identifying risk, analyzing risk, and then building safeguards around those risks to be able to either mitigate or prevent those risks, right? So any company, any business, you want to be able to have PSA risk-based assessments in place. So you're not taking the standard traditional risk management approach, which can be reactive at times. You want to be able to take a predictive approach, a proactive approach. So you're able to alleviate a lot of risk from happening. And then in the higher risk industries, lives are on the line. disastrous events are on the line. So that's why they may need to put it at the forefront, but it's definitely still applicable to the small and medium businesses. Once again, I do offer a one-on-one consultation where I can springboard you into understanding your risk, the risk identification process, the risk assessment process, and different mitigation strategies you can do once these risks arrive. As always, I like to say prevention is better than cure, so it's better to take a predictive approach over your business than being reactive. But that's all for today, guys. Now you know what probabilistic safety assessment is and how it's a game changer in every business model, no matter if it's a small business or a large business. If you like the video, you like the information in the video, definitely feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. And once again, feel free to leave a comment on industries, topics that I should discuss in a simple, practical manner. Thank you guys for watching this video. Peace.